Hey guys, I'm Bobby Childs from Adventures in Whiskey, and thank you so much for joining me. In this video, I thought we'd take a look at the brand new Knob Creek Cask Strength Rye Whiskey. It's due to hit shelves in June of 2018, so this is sort of a first look. This Cask Strength whiskey comes in at 119.6 proof, so just under 120 proof. It matured in Warehouse A over at the Jim Beam facility over there. And barreled in 2009, which pretty much makes this a 9-year-old whiskey. It doesn't say 9 years old on the bottle, which I know that's sort of, the end-all be-all of information. But the press materials that was sent along with this say 9 years old specifically. So 9-year-old whiskey, just under 120 proof. We don't know how big the batch is. We just know it's a limited edition. We don't know if it's going to be a yearly thing or sort of a one-off. But I thought we'd take a look at that and compare it to the standard rye, which is 100 proof and no age statement. Generally believed to be about 6-ish years old. But we're not sure. I've had the rye before. It's a solid rye whiskey. It's something I'd heartily recommend. But I thought I'd pick up another bottle so I can compare it to this. As you can tell, this is unopened, but that's changing now. The price tag on this limited edition rye is $69.99, so great price. I would have expected something higher, so kudos to Jim Beam for pricing it just right. There we go. Let's pour a little bit here. And while we're at it, let's pour some of the standard rye. All right. So, where do we start? Let's start with the standard rye. Like I said before, no age statement. 100 proof. It's a solid rye. It's one I'd recommend to people. You get the rye spice, obviously. What I find interesting about the standard Knob Creek rye is that its nose is typically just a little closed off, but it comes alive after a few minutes, or a drop or two of water. Now, the Knob Creek Cask Strength rye it's much more robust. The extra proof, you'd think the extra proof would close it off even further until it sort of has time to sort of just open up, and that might be the case, but a fresh pour, it's pretty robust. You get a lot of those baking spices. You get that Jim Beam peanut. A lot of caramel. Brown sugar. The dog doesn't like brown sugar, apparently. Even a little leather on the back. That's nice. Just going back to the standard, you get the familiar notes. The caramel isn't as dark. You really don't get the leather, so that could be just an age thing. The spices aren't as present in the standard small batch as they are in the Cask Strength rye. This smells great. I don't know off the top of my head what Jim Beam's rye whiskey mash bill is. I'm assuming it's not super rye heavy. I know the Booker's rye whiskey from a year or two ago was noted for its really high rye content. So I'm assuming their standard rye whiskey, the rye content is a bit lower. It's got to be at least 51%. We know that. So I'm assuming it's closer to the 51% than something like a 70%, like the Booker's rye was reported to be. Ah, it smells nice. Even a little bit of like a burnt orange peel in that one. Just a dark citrus note. It's nice. Let's taste it. I've said it once before, and I'll say it. I'm a giant fan of the Jim Beam, the Knob Creek lineup. I think the rye was a great addition to it. It's nicely balanced with sweet and spicy notes, and it makes for a wonderful a Manhattan if you're not just sipping it neat. Oh, that's good. You get a little of that toasted rye note. I say a lot. It's there. Obviously, it's one of the dominant notes, along with the caramel, which you typically get from barrel-aged spirits. A little bit of vanilla. The baking spices are there, but they sort of cool off a bit. And mid-palate, I know it's 100 proof, which is a pretty strong whiskey, but mid-palate it sort of feels slightly watery. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. Let's give it another taste. Maybe I was wrong. It's not really watery, but it sort of loses itself a little bit mid palate, but it finds itself again in the finish. Pretty long. You get all those spice notes carried in with a big wave of like caramel, a little bit of oak, not too much, just a little bit. So the finish is nice, long, spicy. And that big Jim Beam kind of a roasted peanut note carries through. I find that note more in the rye than I do their bourbon, believe it or not. So, quick palate cleanser. Sometimes I'd like to use sparkling water. But you can use whatever water you want, whatever you have. Speaking of water, so you don't have to. I know some people are big into getting, Kentucky limestone water shipped in expensive ass bottles. You don't really have to do that. Whatever water you have around, whatever water you're used to tasting, except for faucet water, that'll work just fine. Water's water. Don't be nasty in the comments for that statement. Let's try the new rye. That smells so good. The couple minutes it was out, those richer caramel notes are really coming into play. A little clove. This is nice. What's interesting about this, spices kicked up a lot. Obviously, it's stronger. It's 20% stronger with the ABV volume, but the spices are ramped up compared to the small batch, even though it's the same exact mash bill. What's interesting too, it's though there's a lot of dark caramel and stuff on the nose, I find the small batch a little bit sweeter. This one comes across, the cask strength comes across a little bit more savory, a little bit more spicy, a lot richer than the standard. The toasted rye grain's really coming out. It's like buttery toasted rye grain. Really good. A lot more of those notes I picked up in the nose are coming through in the palate. So you've got this sort of the undercurrent of vanilla and dark caramel. But those rye spices, the baking spices are starting to are coming into play. There's a little bit of a citrus note in the back, a bit more of that cigar box or leather, sort of something you want to get with aged whiskeys. And a little bit of an astringent oak right towards the finish. A lot more of those Jim Beam roasted peanuts. Altogether, it feels like a more complex whiskey, a more balanced whiskey, definitely a richer whiskey than the standard Knob Creek small batch rye. The finish. The finish is really long. You're left with you can sort of coat your mouth and coat your throat, chest warming. It leaves you with a bit of a bittersweet and spicy finish, which is nice. Something of note, it's almost 120 proof, and it's very, very drinkable at that proof. You can add water or ice if you want, but 119 proof, it's easily drinkable. I mean, it's fantastic. So of the two, if you couldn't tell, obviously I like the new cask strength much better than I like the small batch. Price-wise, like I said, I don't remember specifically what the small batch cost me. Somewhere between 30 and 40 bucks, I believe. This one comes in at a $70 price tag. To me, is it worth the extra money? I'd say probably yes. You get a much better, much more complex, much richer drinking experience. It's really well done. Any higher price, if it came in at 100 bucks, might be too much. But 70 bucks, sure, I'd pay 70 bucks for that all day. Hope that helps. If you like what you see, please subscribe. If you've had this, please comment below. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, I'll see you soon. Cheers.